Imagine being trapped within the equal spot for 12 long years, unable to transport, unable to break out, and slowly losing away at the same time as the human beings meant to love and protect you do definitely nothing. This isn't just a horror tale. This is the actual lifestyles case of Lacey Fletcher, a lady whose tragic fate could shock even the maximum hardened investigators. When government ultimately located her, what they saw become something instantly out of a nightmare. What took place to Lacey Fletcher? And how did no person keep her from the unspeakable horror she endured for over a decade? Stay with me until the stop due to the fact this situation will go away you thinking how such cruelty ought to exist in a modern society. Lacey Ellen Fletcher changed into born in 1985 in Slaughter, Louisiana, a small quiet town where friends knew each different through name and life moved at a slower tempo. Lacey turned into an only child to her mother and father, Sheila and Clay Fletcher. Growing up in a small town like Slaughter, Lacey's childhood seemed to be ordinary. She became described as a type and gentle lady, someone who could mile up any room she walked into. She loved college, had buddies, and became energetic in various extracurricular sports. As a younger girl, there was not anything approximately Lacey's life that indicated something unusual. However, as Lacey entered her teenage years, something started out to trade. Her character shifted from outgoing to reserved, and she or he started out to pull away from social sports. She was turning into greater withdrawn and remoted, spending greater time on my own in her room. Her parents, who were first of all very supportive and loving, didn't appear to apprehend the symptoms that something became wrong. Instead of investigating in addition, they let her retreat into her own world, where they commenced to turn a blind eye to her worsening circumstance. Around the age of 15, Lacey's bodily and emotional properly being started out to hastily decline. She stopped attending faculty and became extra reclusive. Friends and circle of relatives noticed that they were not in touch with her, and he or she stopped showing up at social gatherings. No one truly knew what began happening behind closed doors. Her dad and mom, Sheila and Clay, failed to understand the gravity of the scenario and allowed their daughter's intellectual health to spiral out of control. The adjustments in Lacey have been diffused at first. She began turning into greater depending on her parents for even the maximum primary duties. However, as a substitute of getting her the assist she wished, Sheila and Clay withdrew even similarly from their daughter's lifestyles. They didn't take Lacey to a medical doctor, and that they didn't are looking for expert assist for her emotional or bodily situation. As Lacey's isolation extended, so did the forget. Her parents did not intervene in the way any loving mother and father need to have. It regarded as though Lacey's nicely being became not a concern for them. As Lacey's fitness persisted to go to pot, she became bodily unable to stroll or stand on her personal. She became limited to a residing room chair for maximum of the day and night time. It became her permanent residence, the location she could spend the following 12 years of her life. The chair wasn't simply a chunk of furniture. It had become a jail. Lacey had misplaced the ability to transport, and the debilitation that came with her circumstance trapped her in that spot. It turned into pronounced that she never left the chair, no longer even for simple desires like using the restroom or getting showered. The room itself became her complete global, and her dad and mom, in place of presenting care, allowed her to waste away in that chair in isolation. Despite her deteriorating health, no person sought help. The Fletchers said to themselves, living in a far-flung part of city wherein nobody should see the symptoms of overlook. Lacey's lack of mobility worsened. Her muscle tissues atrophied, and he or she started to expand sores and wounds that had been by no means treated. Her body began to decompose in that chair. The pores and skin on her legs had become macerated from extended sitting, and strained sores evolved to the point that they commenced to appear like open wounds. What became even greater annoying became the fact that Lacey wasn't even supplied fundamental human care. She became now not bathed, and no person appeared to care about her hygiene. Her body became protected in wounds, sores, and dirt. Yet, there was no sign of urgency from her dad and mom. Sheila and Clay continued living their lives as though not anything changed into incorrect, ignoring their daughter's pain and struggling. Lacey changed into forgotten, abandoned by using the very people who should have blanketed her. In January 2022, a stunning discovery might eventually carry this bad case to mild. Authorities arrived at the Fletcher home after a concerned neighbor raised the alarm about Lacey's circumstance. What they discovered became implausible. Lacey Fletcher, on the age of 36, were trapped in her chair for 12 years. Her body were mummified, and she or he changed into barely recognizable. Her skin becomes significantly discolored, and her body had wasted away to the factor that she seemed more like a corpse than a dwelling human being. The information of what they located were almost too worrying, Commander. Lacey had been left in that chair for goodbye that her frame had grown to be fused to it. The atrophy of her muscle tissue and the lack of motion had precipitated her limbs to turn out to be almost inflexible. She became now not able to circulate her frame or maybe communicate. The stench of rotting flesh became overwhelming. It changed into glaring that Lacey had suffered particularly inside the very last years of her life, and there was no question that her mother and father had been at once responsible for her forget. The discovery bowled over the local community, and the sector reacted with horror. How could this have long gone neglected for see you later? How should a younger female suffer for 12 years in a present-day society in which help is supposed to be reachable? It didn't make experience that no person, friends, or own family had come ahead to help Lacey. The forget turned into so extreme, so unthinkable, that it left many humans grappling with the query of how such cruelty ought to exist inside a family. When the authorities puzzled Lacey's parents about her condition, their responses had been chilling. Lacey Fletcher, her mom, expressed surprise and claimed that she had never noticed the severity of Lacey's condition. She even went as far as to say that Lacey had constantly been a personal person, and it turned into just in her nature to keep away from touch with others. Shella claimed that they'd done the whole thing they might for Lacey, even though there has been no evidence of any try to searching for scientific assist or intervention for their daughter. Clay Fletcher, Lacey's father, further denied duty for the forget about. He insisted that they had done their fine and that Lacey had chosen to stay inside the chair. Neither of them confirmed any real emotion whilst talking about their daughter's suffering, which most effective made the situation more eerie. Their responses felt detached and bloodless, as if they'd lived in an alternate truth wherein their daughter's torment become invisible. It was as though they had been not able or unwilling to realize the horror they had allowed to unfold beneath their roof. Following Lacey's loss of life, Sheila and Clay Fletcher had been arrested and charged with second-degree homicide, as well as neglect. The case sparked an outpouring of concern and grief. How ought something like this occur in the 21st century, in developed state? How should a mother and father stand via and watch their toddler suffer for 12 years without taking any motion? What does this say approximately the manner we as a society replied to the struggling of others? The investigation into Lacey's death raised many crucial questions. Could pals or network participants have noticed the signs and symptoms of abuse and forget? Why didn't everybody report Lacey's scenario in advance? Was there a failure inside the intellectual health gadget that allowed this forget to preserve without intervention? Many consider that mental fitness troubles and social isolation performed a large position in Lacey's tragic destiny, as her dad and mom never sought assist for her intense situation. The case additionally delivered interest to the wider issues of child overlook, elderly care, and intellectual health focus. Lacey's tale became a tragic symbol of how a lack of care and isolation can cause devastating consequences. It referred to as for extra network vigilance and systemic exchange to make sure that nobody ever has to suffer the manner Lacey Fletcher did. Lacey Fletcher's case is a reminder that forget, whether or not by means of own family contributors or society at massive, can take a silent and deadly toll on prone people. It raises the question of what number of other humans are living in conditions like Lacey's, in which they're remoted, ignored, and left to go through in silence. Lacey's tragic death must function a take-heed call for each person. We can't allow this sort of cruelty to continue. We have to continue to be vigilant and ensure that folks who are most susceptible, whether they're children, the elderly, or human beings with intellectual health challenges, acquire the care, interest, and compassion they deserve. Her case will never be forgotten, and as we mirror on Lacey's existence and dying, we must ask ourselves, how many more Lacey Fletchers are out there, expecting a person to look their ache and step in before it's too late? What are your thoughts on Lacey Fletcher's case? Do you observe more could have been achieved to intrude and shop her? How can we make certain that such forget is never allowed to appear once more? Share your thoughts in the comments under, and don't neglect to subscribe for extra stories, a good way to make you query the whole lot.